So if you look at this, I'm probably in my fourth range bar going down over here. You know, that's why when you hear me say 3/4 of my trades get filtered out, it's because of that. I may look and I'm only in the second range bar going down, and I know from experience that, you know what, by the time that range bar finishes painting, price may have reversed, and that Stochastic RSI may be pointing up instead of down. But if I'm in my third one going down, then I know at least I've got two behind me that are confirming that there's a change in direction, or I'm already inside an established downtrend. This is actually the same trading day. This is one trading day that I'm kind of like documenting here. Same idea here. Break the swing line right there, number one. Immediately go over to your Stochastic RSI here. Now we're in the fifth range bar going down. You look over here, and just in case, I'm just doing this just in case to show you a more complicated situation, because yours truly, I believe what I did here was not get out here. By this time, because of this penetration here, I removed my Fibonacci price bands. I didn't have any of them on this chart. I had them on here, but I didn't have them here because of this choppiness. All right, I wasn't trusting the bands because there's quite a bit of chop here, and I was kind of hoping this would happen. But look what happened. You know, I entered about over here, and then when price got over here, I basically took a wash. I think it was like a 2-tick profit. You know, but this is a very important point, you know, and I don't really have this in the slide. This is something that you don't want to worry about the first few weeks you're trading this, or even the first month, but it's something that if you adopt this trading methodology, it's an issue you have to understand. And it's actually, I think if I do this right, pretty simple to understand. If a market is in an overall downtrend and you get a very quick reaction like that, that's immediately rejected by the market, you know what I did when I got stopped out? As soon as I got stopped out, and I do this like a robot now because I've been doing it so long, as soon as I got stopped out, in anticipation of this happening, I placed a sell and a stop right below there. Here's why. And this is where it gets a little tricky. If price had traded here for over 5 minutes at this level, I would remove that sell and a stop, all right? But if the market rejects it in 2-3 minutes and gets down here, I have some incredibly valuable information. I'm in a downtrend, and when price went up, all it found was sellers. See, now I know. Now I know if price gets here, there's going to be follow-through. But this is a very subtle trade. I wouldn't want to write this up on paper and give it to somebody, because it's one of those things that you pick up from experience. If someone were to say to me, now how many minutes is it supposed to trade up here? Is it 4 minutes, 5 minutes, or 6 minutes, or 5.5 minutes? You know, it's like, I don't know. You know, it's a thing where you're watching the market, and if you see price ticking here for several minutes, then you know what? The market is accepting that as an area where it will conduct trade. But if price goes up here, and less than a minute later it's over here, the market just told you some very valuable information. In a downtrend, it cannot conduct trade there. All right? It only found sellers up there. So that's part of my trading methods too. It's not really written up here, but you know, this is something, again, if you adopt these trading methods, this is something that will make the difference between just being a mediocre profit at the end of every week and having a nice profit at the end of every week. Because I can guarantee you, both USD and Russell, I get a bunch of these every single week. As a matter of fact, in my newsletter, I wrote a whole article, a small article on this. Because it's such a big deal. When you're dealing in the day trading world, when you're dealing with these small time frames, you've reduced market noise, but in no way have you even come close to eliminating them. So because of that, you're going to have totally valid trade setups that you had confidence in when you entered the market, but you're still going to get stopped out. So I'll enter a trade. 2 minutes later, I'm stopped out with my 4 or 5 tick loss, and then 3 minutes later, the market's heading my way again. And you're sitting there going, wow, well, I guess I shouldn't feel bad because I guessed right and lost this. No, you have to find a way to capitalize from that because it happens every single day. You know, you don't know if that's an institution. You don't know if that's an arbitrage program. You don't know if that's program trading for some other reason. But whatever caused the market to go right there and trade there for a great big 30 seconds before it resumed its trend, you know, we're never going to know. All we know is that it happens almost every single day in the day trading markets that have enough volume that we're interested in. Okay? Yeah?
Will there be any difference between, I noticed these are on galactic trader, will there be any difference in the charts between?
Well, yeah, GT doesn't have either volume bars or range bars, okay? That's only Fibonacci trader. So that's a big difference. Yeah.
The number 2 line on the left, would that actually be over 2 peaks on that RSI 500 on that display?
Well, I don't think so because I'm using the crosshairs to draw it.
Okay, it just looks like it's in the same place.
You know why? Because it could be. See, this is a range bar which has a 20-tick range. And if you look over here, we have a 5-tick range. So if you actually review the prior, if you actually review this area right here, you'll see that, yeah, it pretty much includes all of this stuff here. So a swing trader using swing lines would be spared this volatility. A day trader can actually profit from it. So this is choppy crap for a swing trader, and this is trading opportunities for a day trader. It's the exact same time period. That's what's pretty cool about it. Over here, going to next trading day, I believe here. Oh yeah. So before we were trading this pretty much down. Now you know, we've bottomed here, and we're looking at this scenario. Swing line break. You know, you look at number 2. Is it rising at least a couple of bars? Yes, it is. Is this rising? Yes, it is. And because both are rising, you want to get in as soon as possible. If this were falling, I would wait for a pullback, and I'm glad you didn't have to do that because the first pullback was right there. Second pullback was right there. I don't have any instructions in the slideshow on this, but human nature being what it is, a lot of us, even though they're both rising, having just observed this over a 2-day period, which is a big, big fall. That's a big fall. Somebody might say, I don't care what these stupid lines say. I'm not crazy enough to trade against that trend. So they would say, you know what, I'm going to take the safe way out and wait for the first pullback. Unfortunately, it wasn't up till here, but notice that it still worked pretty well, and the second pullback worked pretty well. I think what I did here, I'm sorry, your question is why is the next 750 here?
Yeah, as opposed to 3,000.
Yeah, here's the thing. You know, if you don't even use that, it's not a problem. If you notice, I'm not really using next period swing lines or next period Stochastic RSIs in my volume bar chart. I just did it. It's very rare that I'll look at the next period on a VB chart. But when I did these charts last June, 600 was the value, and now we graduated to the next level, 750, just because the volume, intraday volume in this contract's picked up.
Yuri, I have a question on this one. If you entered this trade at 1 and stayed in it and used your swing line as a trailing stop,
Yeah.
when you started approaching your trailing stop,
Yeah,
that's your exit point, but
Yeah.
it's also a possible entry point.
You're right. See, here's how I work. That is confusing, and let me talk to you how I do that. Let's say I had decided to, because in actual trading, when I did this trade, this is an actual trade I did. I actually did get out at about 6 ticks profit, and then you know, just like I told you, I said to myself, why the hell did I do that again? And I did re-enter here. But let's say in your example, if I had stayed in this trade, I would have gotten out right at the very top right there. Because if I have a nice profit, I don't really wait for a whole lot of retracement. So I would have gotten out right there, but I would have used the exact same logic. As soon as I would have gotten out, I would have placed a sell stop right underneath that bar just in case that trend resumes, but I only would have kept it there for about 5 minutes. All right? I wouldn't keep it there for 15 minutes. Because if I keep it there for 15 minutes, normal market noise, the market just might get choppy. But if price breaks the swing line or goes above it and only trades there for a minute, no more than 2, and then it comes back down here, what does that tell you? Same thing as before. Teensy little pause in a downtrend. The market went up a little bit, and all it found was sellers in a downtrend. So, yeah.
If you were out of the market at that point, would you wait for it to break out the lower?
Yeah, if I'm out of the market, it's easier in your psychology because if I just took my profit there, I can't 2 seconds later re-enter another trade because then I'd have to ask myself, why did I exit in the first place? It's just that now you're kind of dealing with that area where trading methodology and trading psychology are coming together. If I entered right here and now the market's gone sideways for 6, 7 bars and now it's beginning to trade above my swing line, I just want to get my profit. I just want to take my profit and not give too much back to the market. All right?
As if you did not take the number 1, so you're totally out of the market.
Then, yeah. Again, if you look at it from a trading rule standpoint, this looks sloppy. If you look at it from a trader psychology standpoint, it's actually pretty good. Because if I captured a nice profit right here and I place a sell stop here, I can do that and I feel good about it. All right. Let's say for some reason I never got in this trade and now I'm trading here. I don't feel comfortable placing a sell in here because my stop loss is a little bit bigger than I'd want it to be, But I can re-enter right at that swing line and have a 4 or 5 tick stop loss and be happy about it. So again, this is one of those areas, I've got to say for the third time, where if you just look at the trading rules, it's kind of sloppy. But if you look at the trader psychology, there is a difference, and it's easier trading like that. All right? Yeah? Did you have a question? Oh, okay. All right.
Here, I'll just add my own sake. Sometimes I get confused just watching and the temptation of bars to figure out which way to go. I just put those alarms on there.
Yeah.
And so you'd have a long alarm, a short alarm, and that makes it a lot easier to not always have to be watching the screen.
Yeah, I agree with that. Actually, I do that. If people watch me trading at home, they would be shocked because a lot of times when I'm trading, I actually have a book or magazine open. I'm throwing a ball with my dog. I have music on. It's the antithesis of what you would think of as the disciplined trader. And the reason is, in my trading methodology, what works best for me is if I stare at this screen continuously, I don't know about you guys, but I make things up in my head of reasons of where the market's going to go next. Okay, and if I just say, you know what, I'm only going to be interested in the markets when price is right on a swing line, and then I have a, if you think about it, when price approaches a swing line, in like 6, 7 seconds, you'll know if you should trade or not. Because you got this 3-step process. Here, check the RB cycle line, check the VP cycle line. Either most of the time you're going to say I'm filtered out. Sometimes you're going to say I'm going against the trend. I'll wait for a pullback. And sometimes they'll say, oh shoot, got to act fast, and you do your market order and you're in. So what are we looking at here? Oh yeah, this is. I guess this is just another example. I'm sorry, I thought I had moved on to another topic, but this is just another example. I guess the only thing new I can add to this, there's your break, so that's 1. That maybe this was a test. Can people do 1, 2, 3? I don't know. But what this is, maybe I'm trying to. Maybe the reason I put this in here was again just to let you know that when you're dealing, especially with these are the range bars. They're now on the right. You don't have to worry about the overbought, oversold. As a matter of fact, it's actually better if your range bar cycle, if you're going long, is up here, or if you're going short, it's down here. It's the exact opposite of what you were taught when you first heard about oscillators. And I think what I did was I just added a few charts because those charts that we just finished looking at were for Orlando. And I did that, the second week of July. And these are from August. So when I was creating the slide presentation for today, I think I took the current trading day that we had the day I put the slideshow together to send to Linda, and this was that trading day. So I'm just showing some of the trades that were in effect the day I put the slideshow together. So this was one trade right there. Then we had another trade right there. I didn't do any of these. Here's something I can say. You notice we had a few swing line breaks going south, but notice I didn't do them. They were filtered out. My Stoch RSI is rising. If you go back to the prior chart, we entered right there, and the next chart had an entry here, and I didn't do any of these because from here to here, you would have been filtered out. So this is actually a pretty nice system in terms of filtering out losing trades. Those trades would have been small losses, but they still would have been losses, and keeping you in the direction of where you want to go. That's really what you live for. What I tell, when you follow a system like this fairly religiously, what you're going to end up, especially in the euro as opposed to the stock indexes, is you will enter at the market, watch yourself maybe go into an $80, $90 per contract profit, and then the market starts to whipsaw and you get out at a wash. And the reason you put up with that with the EuroFX is because of swings like that. They happen in the EuroFX several times a week where you're going to get in there and you get rewarded for your patience, and there's your $300-400 per contract profit in a matter of minutes. It's a pretty nice thing. What was your question?
On this example, it strikes me as a very real-life scenario in terms of, okay, that's a long to take on that bar. However, the next couple bars later, it goes below the dynamic triple switch line, which in theory, I guess we would have just been stopped out. That's what would we have been stopped out, and is that what
Sure. Let me I understand your question. Once the trade is mature and I'm at a profit of over $100 per contract, if I start touching that swing line, I just take my profit, okay? If I just enter a trade, I actually place my stop loss 5 ticks below that swing line, all right? And I never reached it. Here's what I can't do. I can't place a buy at a swing line and place a stop 2 ticks below it, because I'll get stopped out. They see market makers see market depth, and I've been trading long enough to not play that game. So I don't. You know what? It's perfectly okay to place that stop loss of 5, 6 ticks. I don't do that. I have a market order ready. If price goes 5 ticks below that swing line, I'm out at the market. I don't even place the order in the market. I don't want those nice market makers to even see it. So let's see if there's any more here. Yeah. Same trading day later in the day, same exact scenario. Here's your swing line break. Again, over here, if you would have had a sell signal, this I think no, it wasn't. No, this was your second bar, so we never had 3 bars going down. So you couldn't possibly have done any short trades in this chop here. You kind of got saved. There may have been one trade right there that I ignored. Probably because I didn't do it, God knows why. But over here, you see the exact same scenario. Price breaks swing line, you go to number 2. Stoch RSI is nice and high the way you like it, telling you have a strong uptrend in place. You look at this guy, and that means buy at the market. If this guy would have been falling, like over there instead of over here, you would have been waiting for your first pullback to enter long. And we really are, oh yeah, this is using the tick chart, and this is just showing you that it behaves pretty much exactly the same. I think you get a little bit more volatility, a little bit more whipsaw using the tick chart, but you can treat it with the exact same rules. Break, cycle, support, sell at market, And when you observe this thing, you'll actually see that the triple switch swing line does act as pretty decent support resistance dynamically the way you'd like. This is same day, just later on in that same day. Here's the tick chart again. You break the swing line going up. Stoch RSI is going up. So this is a pretty nice trading methodology. One more thing I can share with you, just having experienced it myself when I first came up with this and decided to when I came up with this, I replaced the method that I was using for close to 8 years. So that was a big deal when I made a decision to change day trading methods. And when I first started trading it, of course, like any trader, I go, hey, can I make it even better now that I'm trading it in real time every day? And then I noticed I was falling into a pattern that most traders do. And see if you can identify with this if you've been an active trader. You start out with something that sounds very reasonable, where you have a setup, a confirmation, and a trigger for entry. And then as you're using the system, you notice that there's things you can do, other indicators you could look at that can either filter out some of the losing trades or give you reason to trade more contracts, on trades that would have been winners. So you start adding more indicators, maybe a screen or two. Maybe you start looking at even other markets, intermarket type analysis. And then after a few weeks of that, you say to yourself, you know what, I'm starting to get analysis paralysis. I'm looking at so many things in a short time frame that once I get a reason to consider taking a trade, I have to check so many things that the market starts moving and I'm not sure if I should trade it, and I miss the trade because I was busy looking. So then you go through another cycle and you say, you know what, I don't need this. I'm going to simplify my trading. And I'm going to get rid of all these extra things. And I'm going to not only go back to where I was, I'm just going to use one time frame and one or two indicators and trade that. And that looks really good. It makes you feel lighter, except for one thing. When you do that, use just one time frame and one or two indicators, especially in day trading, you're going to have so many false trading signals that it will outweigh your winners, and you'll either be a flat or losing trader because of that. And there seems to be this cycle that traders go through of adding complexity, then saying, no, I've got to use the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid, and you start stripping that stuff off, and you go back to a light trading regimen. And then you go, no, that don't work, and you say to yourself, well, now I'm more experienced. This time when I add my filters and my conformers, I'm really going to get it right. So you start adding more things again. A few months go by, analysis paralysis. It's just a cycle I've seen myself and other traders go through. This thing that I've been presented here with the little nuances of trade reentry, wait for pullbacks if you're going against a strong trend or you miss a trade for some reason, that's actually what I do, and it's been working pretty well for me. Okay? So what you're going to be exposed to, as you look at other traders' methodologies, you may say to yourself, I would like to incorporate that into this. And the reason you listen to my analysis paralysis talk is because that usually won't work. You're far better off trading one methodology as is until you become fluent in it before you get fancy. For example, an experienced skier can do all sorts of fancy things, but I can guarantee you the first month they ever put skis on, they didn't even think about doing that. They patiently mastered the fundamentals before they tried to get fancy. I have actually sold the day trader course and personally trained traders, and while they are learning it with me, before they even walk out the door, they're already telling me how they're going to improve it. That scares me, it really does. And that's happened at least three times. So, you're going to be exposed to more complex things. Complex doesn't mean better. One of the reasons something this simple works, now you just learned about it today. This may not look, this is really simple stuff. Swing line break, look at chart, buy at market or wait for pullback. This is simple stuff. You're going to get exposed to more complex things yesterday and today, and they may fit your style if you're an analytical person. If you're a very structured, very disciplined, and very logical person, that is good for you. If you're more of a patient person, a visual person, this is going to be better for you. And if you try to combine complex with simple, you're going to get analysis paralysis, and it's not going to go anywhere. You're going to have unpredictable results. And I think this is, again, it's the same trading day. And I don't want to beat this to death. I should kind of move on, and maybe we have a few minutes to look at Friday's trading. I've been showing you June and August examples. Let's take a look at Friday. We'll boot up Fibonacci Trader and create the layout we need. Swing line break. Notice the nice pullbacks that the tick chart's giving us here. I kind of like that. Human nature being what it is, ideally this is a goal to, if everything is if, you know, you don't, in hindsight, you don't see that you would have fallen here, by the way. So you really would have gone along here. Notice that on the range bar chart, you would have entered here. It looks like, what, are you crazy? You know, that's hindsight analysis. All you would have seen in the real world is these two bars here, and you entered inside that range bar right there, and that actually would have been a profitable trade right there. That definitely tells you you're still in an upcycle. So maybe that's a good example too, to show you that, you know, you don't have to be too brainy. You didn't, of course, without your crystal ball, you never would have known that this would have happened.
Yuri?
Yeah.
In that last example, you haven't brought this up before, so I'm assuming you ignore it, but one thing that I see on the right chart, which is telling us, you know, long or short, you have divergence there.
Mm-hmm. No, you can't. Yeah.
Slope is up.
Yeah. You know why? Because you don't use this for trading. I mean, if my range bar is 20 ticks, you know, what's your trading range here really? It's about 60 ticks, right? 2 or 3 range bars. You've got an awful lot of noise. You've got an awful lot of time here that these trades can still work for you. Because again, when I use range bars for swing trading, where I use the .005, that's one thing. Here, the range bar, it's just a filter. You know, and if you want, it's also a used for the RB swing line bounce. I can actually see that this is August, and actually we've got a few. Here's one. There's another one. There's another one. There's another one. There's another one. So these RB swing line bounces, you know, you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, depending on how you're feeling. And tailoring this to the individual is not that easy to do when I'm speaking to an audience, because some people, I mean, whenever I meet a group of day traders, I know one thing: at least 3/4 of you or more are scalpers who, let's say you're trading the Russell, you're going to trade for less than 5 ticks. You know, you're happy with that. You want to do it 20 times a day, you want 100% accuracy, and you want to grab 5 ticks every trade. And not too many of you really have the patience to wait 3 or 4 hours for a specific trade setup and then go with it, you know, hoping to capture something like that, you know. That's a minority group. But some of you are like that. So one of the nice things about the way you structure your screen for trading this is that you can use the VB-RB cycle trade predominantly. And when you get a scenario like that, or like this, you feel comfortable, you know, in doing that trade also, because you can monitor both trade setups with the exact same chart. Here with the RB swing line bounce, you don't really look at this chart. It's contained within here, but you can monitor both trade setups with the exact same chart setup.
You would ignore that stochastic RSI change directions and
In the trade that I call the RB swing line bounce, the first trade that's set up covered, you totally ignore the VB chart. You totally ignore it.
this one is VB-RB.
This one's called the VB-RB cycle trade.
Would you be more careful if you see that stochastic RSI change?
The way we do that is, let's look at this example right here, okay? I look over here, swing line break. I look over here without my crystal ball. I don't know if this is going to happen. All I see is I'm in an uptrend. And I look over here and I don't see that either. So yeah, you would enter the market. But to do your example, let's say I was right over here. Let's just say this was right here, okay? And I had been falling for 3 Stoch RSI bars and I want to go long. That's when I wait for a pullback. I get the break over here. And this happens, by the way, in at least 25% of all pullback trades. It's actually pretty sweet because sometimes, you know, if you would have entered at the market right here, that's, you know, it still would have worked, obviously, but if you waited for the pullback, you would have gotten a better price. See, that happens sometimes too. So if you want to go long and your Stoch RSI is rising, you enter at the market. If you want to go long and your VB Stoch RSI is falling, you wait for the first pullback.
Yeah, I'm talking that you are in the trade already.
I'm sorry, say that again?
You are in the trade already. If you go a little bit right, you will see that you are in a trade. In a trade,
Yeah.
and the price goes up, but the stochastic RSI goes down, changes the direction. What would you do in this time?
You have your stop loss in the market and you don't worry about it. You can't do that, because then, you know, if you were to do that, I entered while my stochastic RSI is rising, but, you know, this is a tick chart, you know, 4 or 5 bars later, it looks choppy. You know, that could be 3-4 minutes later. If you try to analyze that, where are you going to go? You know, what kind of trading rules are you going to develop, you know? You can't, once the setup is there for you, and you've done it many, many times, you have to go with the fact that, hey, you know, this has worked for me a lot in the past, and I just have to let it go for a bit. Now, one thing that you might be alluding to, without having said specifically, is what happens if you enter a VB-RB cycle trade, and 20 minutes go by, and you're pretty much where you entered the market. You're at a 2-tick or profit or a 2-tick loss. A lot of us, what we recommend is to use time management stops. If the trade hasn't worked for you in 15 minutes and price is pretty much where you entered, the market is telling you something, that the trade setup you entered was just one of those trade setups that was formed by old-fashioned market noise, which at times will mimic any trade setup any human being can ever come up with. So yeah, but generally speaking, if I'm 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes into a trade, I don't really care what. There's too much noise at this level. This is the guy that tells me my direction. Yeah?
You use the dynamic trio for the swing line. Is there a particular reason why you use that indicator? And how does that really work, that particular indicator?
Well, for one thing, the formula is proprietary. It's a Robert Krauss. No, it's a proprietary. Carlos will tell. Mr. Robert Krauss developed it. Okay. And, you know, he's keeping some of this stuff, even though he's no longer with us, it's still proprietary. So what I do is, you know, having a little bit of a psychology background, you can know something by labeling it, or you can know something by observing its behavior. If you know something by labeling it, which is the common way we know something, usually if we say, okay, that political person over there, he's a liberal, or he's a conservative, he's a moderate, we think we've accomplished something, because now we think we can predict how they would vote on future legislation, let's say. And maybe you did accomplish something, okay? But putting a label on something sometimes actually isn't ideal. Maybe for example, it's responsible for all forms of stereotyping on race, religion, creed, color, whatever you want. You know, putting a label on something, now I know how it's going to behave. Maybe a better way is to just watch it behave without the label. So that, some traders have told me, I cannot use an indicator where I don't know what the formula is. I can accept that. However, for one thing, I'm not a statistician, so if I knew the formula, I'm not exactly sure how much that would have helped me. But by observing the behavior of the thing on chart after chart, back testing on different markets, you can get a feel for the thing. And the dynamic trio, I mean, it's just awesome in my opinion. It's just you know, some people use this method that I have with Ensign software, because it has range bars and volume bars. But, you know, what I tell them, you ain't got the swing lines, and these swing lines are hot. I use the default. The only thing is that, and this is, I'm glad you brought that up, the default, because when Fibonacci Trader was created, more traders were end of day swing traders, the default on the dynamic trio is only flip on the bar's close. For day trading, that makes no sense. The close of a volume bar or a range bar has no meaning. So you want to edit the dynamic trio, and remove, if you've got that value there, wait for close, change it to an N for no. On triple switch, it doesn't have that parameter. It has another parameter called fast track. And you want to change that to a Y. And what fast track does, it's a way of freezing the value from the prior bar. It's almost like a 1 bar look back. Okay? Robert Krauss used that. Here's what it is. You've got a 3 bar look back on the triple switch. It goes back 3 bars. Since the current bar is part of the formula, if you're looking at this in real time, the value of the triple switch swing line could actually be changing as you're looking at it, which makes the initial entry and the initial stop loss placement kind of difficult. So you change fast track to Y, and that'll freeze the value, okay? Yeah.
Can you explain again how you can play catch with your dog and know when
Sure. If price is quite a bit away from my swing line, I have nothing to do.
But how do you?
Or here, no. Let me finish. Let's say price is above my swing line, and my RB Stoch RSI is clearly pointing down. Then I know I have nothing to do until price trades below the swing line and it flips. Okay? I know I have time on my hands. All right? Or if the Stoch RSI on the RB is pointing up and I'm trading above the swing line, you can set an alert in Fibonacci Trader to give you an audio, a sound when price and swing line come together. And you're not being lazy when you do that. You're actually being pretty smart, because you're saying to yourself, if I stare at that screen too much and I watch those ticks paint in, I may get tempted to, I've seen that pattern before, I know what the market's going to do now, and start trading without any rules whatsoever. Okay? And if you're not an active trader, you really can't appreciate that, but if you're an active day trader, you know exactly what I mean. You stare at that thing, you start seeing things that make total sense to you until you take your loss. Then you go, why did I do that? Every active day trader will tell you that. That's a continuous battle. George Angel, I saw him write that down. A man who used to be an S&P floor trader, a man who trains trader, and a man who trades his own account. He said after over 20 years of trading, he still has to do something to keep from staring at those ticks painting in and going into that micro time frame where you feel confident that you know what the market's going to do in the next minute or two. Okay, yeah?
So then once you reach that point, you enter the trade. Now you're paying attention to keeping your...
Yeah, I am, but consider the following. That's a good thing too. We're slowly getting to that point where we should be reviewing the trade management. And as soon as I enter a trade, what's the first thing I do? I'm either going to place a stop loss in the market, or I have a mental stop loss. I have a pencil and a paper, and I write it down. And I'll get out at the market religiously if that price gets hit. And then after I do that, I kind of pause and I say to myself, I review one more time. I look at the directions of my Stokes and I see how things are trending, and I have to make a decision. My decision goes something like this. Am I going to scalp this for 5 to 8 Euro ticks? Am I going to scalp it for 6 to 10 Russell ticks if I'm trading the Russell? Or am I going to consider using the swing line as a trailing stop? I would do that if things are really lining up my way. If everything I'm looking at, not just the Stoch RSI cycles, but I also look at the RB chart. And for example, if I had a reason to sell here, you see, my Stoch RSI, by looking at it, doesn't tell me that, wow, you are trading below the last 2 support levels. This would be an absolutely awesome time to use a trailing stop and try to capture as much profit as you can. By looking at these lines, they don't give me that information. So yeah, this is not a mechanical system. It's a discretionary toolbox with trading rules. And one of those trading rules is, and we're getting to this, you can see that this screen over here is about stop losses, and the next screen will be about profits. You have to make a determination. Am I going to scalp this? Or am I going to use a swing line as a profit objective? And there's a third condition. It doesn't happen often, but if you're an active day trader, it will happen where something happens in the market, and lo and behold, the freaking EuroFX moves 30 ticks in 1 minute. I mean, it happens a couple of times every week, right? If you trade that market, you see it. And now you're sitting on a $400 profit, and you say to yourself, my swing line is $250 away. And I don't want to give that back to the market. So now you have a third level of decision making to make. And that's when if I don't already have them drawn, I'll make sure. I usually have them drawn on my RB chart. I didn't have them here because it would have confused things. But I almost always have my Fibonacci price expansion lines on my RB chart. If my VB chart shows a lot of extension, then I'll also put them on the VB chart to give me a better indication of where to take my profit. So over here, I'll do my 4 ticks on the other side of the swing line value. Sometimes it's 5 ticks. It really, I don't have a strict science for that. I really am not a mechanical trader. And sometimes people really, as a matter of fact, I got one trader in July got very upset with me that I couldn't tell him exactly whether he should place his buys 1 tick or 2 ticks above the swing line is the stop loss. That's just not the way I trade. 4 and 5 ticks to me on the intraday time frame is market noise, and there's just not a difference between a tick. If I see that my cycles aren't looking good by the time I get 4 ticks below the swing line, I want out. I wish I could have gotten out earlier. If my swing lines look really good, I may use 5 or 6 ticks as my stop loss. I can't give you a firm trading rule on that. That's something you'll develop as you use the system and see it in action for yourself. And I think you'll know what I mean. If your swing lines are cool, there's no reason to get out too soon. It's worth having a 5 or 6 tick stop loss as opposed to a 4 tick stop loss. And again, this would be an appropriate time to remind you, I can't write this down because I can't make a firm trading rule out of it, but if I enter a trade and I get stopped out within a couple of minutes, like 3-4 minutes, I immediately, if it was a long trade and I just got stopped out, I immediately place a buy stop right above the prior pivot. And I keep it on for about 5 minutes. Because if price gets there within 5 minutes, that's usually a fantastic trade. What am I doing here? I have just again, let's say you're not feeling particularly clear on a particular day. You're out late for some reason, or you've got a bad cold or the flu or something and you're trading anyway. I recommend just scalping. I don't recommend putting yourself through the process of trying to figure out, should I scalp or should I use my trailing stops. You can probably, even if the trend is strong, using the pullback method, scalp, wait for the first pullback, get back on, scalp, scalping, wait for the next pullback, get back on. When you're feeling under the weather, that's a good thing. The other thing that I need to mention is that most people, regardless of what you may be thinking now, most people, when they're actually in front of that screen, whatever they may be thinking, they become scalpers because they don't like the feeling of nervous tension of keeping a trade on too long. The other thing is some traders may have maybe 2 or 3 times in a row they've made the decision to go for a larger profit. They've gone maybe $125 a contract into a profit, and then a few minutes later, price is almost where they entered. And they just don't like that feeling of giving that back to the market. And that's usually the driving force of traders, regardless of what their original intent is, regardless of what their motives are when they review their trading. Once they're sitting there in front of that screen in real time, they revert to, or they become scalpers. All right. So regardless of how you're using these guys, don't feel that's just you. If you're a scalper, you're a scalper. That's it. The other thing that I do here is obviously if you get a trade in the opposite direction, you have to exit. That's just common sense, right? But I will, this really doesn't explain it perfectly, because what I forgot to mention here is I don't do this in the first couple of minutes of a trade. Let's say I enter a trade right at a swing line on a pullback, okay? I don't get out if it penetrates the swing line by 2 ticks. I'm using my initial stop loss. This is what I do after my trade, let's say, goes at least 5 ticks, 6 ticks into a profit, all right? Then I will consider using the swing line as a trailing stop, and just 2 ticks below it will be enough to make me consider closing the position. I know that's a little confusing. You have any questions about that? I wish I could make it clearer for you, but what do people want? I mean, if I were to give you trading rules that I don't really trade, that's not very nice either, is it? So this is actually what I do, even though it may not be as copacetic as people who are used to mechanical trading styles are used to. This is the way life works for me. I enter a trade, I have to give it more room. Once the trade goes profitable, I can start tightening up. That's really all I'm saying here. Okay?
On your last point on the text part there, we talked about taking half the position on.
Yeah.
You mentioned before on that second half to move your stop and break even.
Yeah, that's true too. That's true too.
The second one, if you keep the trailing stop below the swing line,
Yeah.
you can still lose
Basically, if I go $100 a profit per contract, I'm not going to take a loss, regardless of what any swing line or cycle or anything says. I will simply get out where I entered if the price goes back there, and I'll re-enter the market if it resumes the swing. It's that's not a trading rule based on any sort of backtesting. That's just my own personal psychology. I can't live like that, watching $100 profits turn into losses. I can live watching them turn into washes, but I can't live watching them turn into losses and do this on a day-to-day basis and not suffer from the stress. Yeah. Okay, so this actually is worth spending a moment on. Over here we have a situation where you don't have to worry about this. If you adopt this trading method, I really wouldn't worry about this the first month. But it is, again, something you need to consider as time passes to maximize profits. Sometimes you have everything lining up and the trend resumes, but unbeknownst to you, for reasons that none of our technical indicators can show us, there appears to be a resistance level here and some strong selling comes in. So rather than what Richard and I were just discussing, rather than watching $100 or $150 profit turn into a loss, here's how I like to trade under ideal circumstances. You know, I'm all alone in my trading room, no distractions. I feel clear, all right? I'm not under the weather in any respect. I trade multiple contracts, and what I'll do is I'll pretend that the first half of my position is just a scalp, and I'll lift it, you know, fairly early, all right? And that locks in a profit such that if price retraces back to where I entered and I get out, I still have a profit. But what if price continues going just the way my setup said it would, because everything was nice and clear and all the cycles lined up? Well, now I've got 2 or 4 contracts. And you can start doing this, just do this with 2 contracts. Lift one, you know, you're 6 to 8 ticks in a profit, and then let the other one go with a trailing stop. And what you'll find is those times when the market starts to take off your direction, but then it just, the rally dies and it just starts to chop around, you don't end up with a wash. You still end up with a profit. And that's a really nice feeling. And there we go. So we can look at a few examples of Friday's trading. So any questions on any of this stuff before we look at Friday?
Can you actually help us set up our chart?
Yeah, I think we could do that right now. Yeah. Let me just... We'll create the actual charts just as you saw them here right now. We'll create them from scratch. Even if they're here, we'll create new ones. I just want to see where, here we go. Here's where Carlos put these. So, okay, let's first create the volume bar chart, all right? I don't really, 300 I would never use. I'm sorry, 300. Delete chart. 4-minute chart, I want daily chart for perspective. So tomorrow, you'll probably see me put up a 4-minute chart. And the only thing I do with that, and it's not even set up right, this really isn't, let me redo this. Let's do this one first. I didn't talk about this at all, but if, let's say, I look at the market, this actually, you know, if those people who were there in Orlando, it was so embarrassing. We started trading, and the Stoch RSI own and the Stoch RSI next in the range bar chart, we're trending in opposite directions. And that doesn't happen often, but I got a rule like, you know, don't trade. So I was trying to figure out, what do I do? You know, when that situation happens, I know the market's not going to support a trend, but that's also a good time. You can still scalp. But at the same time, I don't feel comfortable using the range bar chart as a filter anymore for scalping, because it's basically telling me I don't know what's going on. So I use a 4-minute chart, and let's create that first, and then we'll go on to the volume bar chart and the range bar chart. Oh boy, what does he call this? 059. Here it is. So what I want to do is I want to have a 5, and I want to have a 10, and I want to have a 15. And this will just be something, there's no reason to have to go through this now, because tomorrow while I'm trading, and then Tuesday morning again, we'll review exactly like more scalping information. And once I have this, what I want to do is I want to put 3, and you probably just by looking at this, you'll have an intuitive sense of how I use this just from having watched this display. I'm going to actually put up 3 different Stoch RSIs there. This one I'm going to have on the on the next, and I'll make that one blue just for the colors I'm used to, so I can quickly recognize them. And this one I'll put on the high, again 12 instead of 14. And this one I'm going to wait. It's not a big deal, but it smooths it out a little bit. And I like to do that on the high period because I want to make sure that that's my ultimate filter for scalping, 15-minute time frame. So over here, let me change that color so I can recognize it. And over here, and that's ugly. Good, that one. And over here on the own, let me just change that to red. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me. I want that one red. And I want high over here to be magenta. That's the way I have it structured at home. This way, while I'm talking and stuff, I don't have to get confused just by color. And I want to change that to 12 also. So all 3 Stoch RSIs are 12. And then, here they are. So this is actually very simple. Scalping becomes I use the volume bar chart for trade administration when scalping, but I kind of use this chart right here to help me when I'm in scalp mode too. And it's very simple because you'll find periods of time where they all kind of agree. Again, with this particular Stoch RSI, when it gets up there, you don't have to feel that the market's overbought. This just tells me to scalp only going long, but not scalp short. Okay. Yeah. When the Stoch RSI is a kind of unique indicator. It's a very unique momentum oscillator. It doesn't really tell you a whole lot about overbought or oversold. So what I was saying was when all 3 of them are up here like this and going sideways, that to me just means only scalp long trades, don't scalp short. Okay?
Can you bring up the box where you have the modifications? Because I missed some of the ones you were doing.
The modifications I was making were changing the color, and you don't want to see that, right? The only modification I made was changing 14 to 12. That's it. So I have one for the own, one for the next, and one for the high. And we don't need to look at this. Let's create the volume bar chart now.
Yuri, it looked like you changed one of the no's to a yes, or yes to a no.
I think that was for waiting, and that was the high period.
Okay.
Yeah. And I want that weighted because it makes it smoother. That's like my overriding filter, and I don't want that one to chop on me because that would helps eliminate losing scalps. So over here, we're going to 059 U chart. Let's create the volume bar chart. And 059 is the one Carlos. I don't know what these numbers, Carlos created this, I don't really know what that means, but it's not important. Volume bar, and I want 750. And just for fun, let's do 1,000 here. If time permits, I don't really use it, I don't have a rule for it, but just if time permits tomorrow and Tuesday, maybe we'll notice something with it together. One of you guys can give me a trading rule. So what I want to do with this is we want to put triple switch on here right away. What I want to do with this, there, much better. I want to, if you don't mind, because I'm going to have this displayed tomorrow, I would prefer that we use the white background. It just makes things stand out a little bit better. At home, I don't really care. But while we're here, I would prefer, I do want that checked. It's this one, I don't want the outline. And let's make that this blue color. And I'll make it blue, and that's not what I wanted. That's fine. And for that, let's make it that. Let's put on the triple switch, and I'll show you what I meant by the fast track and where that's located. So let's do triple switch on. I go in here and we can see fast track is set to Y already. That's good. And back, if you leave this as N, I think what it does, because I change this to Y also. If you leave this as N, I think it freezes the current bar, the opening tick. But this makes more sense, and I'm pretty sure from what Carlos told me, this is how Robert Krauss used the triple switch. What this does is it looks at the value of the prior triple switch value and it freezes that for your current bar. So it's always like doing a look back of 1. It's the same as doing a displaced moving average, displacing it by 1. And this is perfect. And we'll make that a dark green. And just to make sure the symbol, no, I don't want circles. Make that 3. So that should do it. And there's my, that's obviously, I think we need to do a little work on the font here. Oh, yeah.
It's chart scale.
So just to make it easier for everybody to see tomorrow. I think you have the feeling when you look at this, I was trading Friday and Friday was just wonderful. This was a very easy trade to spot. This was a pullback right there. Here was a trade where yours truly got whipsawed, and then over here the market went dead, and I pretty much got out with maybe a 3-4 tick profit. But you know what? I mean, just look, isn't that beautiful? This is $125 per contract from here, and that was just easy trade. I actually took the profit here, and then I re-entered right there. And that's just me. If you would have stayed in here all the way to here, that would have been fine. Just my trading style, because I had a $250 per contract profit, when price went above that swing line only by 1 tick, I said, you know what, I'll just grab it, lock it up, and place a sell stop right below here. So that's just trading style. Let me go back in here. I noticed that I didn't change the, I don't really need them different colors. It's actually easier on my eyes if I leave them the same, and I don't want any symbols. And there was a nice long trade prior to that. And we'll review that in a couple of minutes. Let's put the Stoch RSI on here. And I want to use a value of 12 instead of 14. Yeah, let's make that green too. And that's my, let's make that a little bit easier to see, because especially on there, let's make it a 3. So that should be easy for everybody to see who's even in the back of the room, tomorrow when this thing is up on the screen. And we'll put that over here. And let's create the range bar chart now. So we've got it here already, so what I'll do is I'll just recreate it. And, so to avoid confusion, let me just get out of that thing, new chart. So when you do a range bar, because we're doing day trading, we're using a low range point value, you definitely want to check, use tick data. Here's my 0.002. I'll put in a 0.003 over here, because on the range bar swing line bounce, I use the next period Stoch RSI. There's no reason, I don't use the highest period. And let me massage this one a little bit. In a range bar, if you don't already know, the closing price of a range bar always has to be the high or the low of that bar, because you don't paint the next bar until you exceed a range. So normally what I'll do is I'll change this to a plain old open high-low close chart, and we'll make this a little bit more palatable to look at in a moment. And let me thicken that, and there's that chart right there. Let me go over here. Grids, I don't really like grids. Go over here, font. And there we are with the fonts. And now we'll add our dynamic trio swing line, and then we'll add the 2 Stoke RSIs. Let's just see what that looks like. Yeah, that looks good to me. Style, thickness, we can make it 3. And color really doesn't matter, but now let me see what that looks like, and that looks yucky. So I need to change this one too, because that won't be visible if it's a light color in the back of the room. And let's add the 2 Stoke RSIs. Change that to 12. So the fast one will be red, and the slow one will make a darker color. And there you go. And that one didn't paint very well, did it? Good point. Much better. And let's, so people can see them in the back of the room, let's thicken them. I'm sorry, style, thickness. And there we go. You can, let's see if crosshairs are enabled here to do multiple windows. No, as a matter of fact, it's a bit of a, let me, just give me a moment here and go into define global settings, general, show crosshairs, I don't want that. Okay, that's good. Okay. So where's my layout's a little different. That's why you see me stumbling. So you can see actually over here, when we had this break over here, you know, we were starting to like go down here like that. And if you wait for that first pullback right there, you know, you had it. You know, you had this market. And that's, you know, I'm sure you recognize. Break the swing line. Look at the break the swing line inside this bar, then you look at the Stoke RSI over here, and it's really not falling enough. What you don't see, though, the right thing to do would be to wait for that pullback, to be honest with you, right there, just because this guy was only beginning to be falling back. But if we look at this market a little bit more depth, I'm sorry, wrong chart. Focus. And there you go. You can actually see we've been in a wavy kind of choppy downtrend in here. And that's kind of like that little double toppy type action right there. You can actually, again, this is the type of stuff you really can't teach. It's just something that most experienced traders, they can look at a chart and, you know, very quickly see support resistance level. And on my range bar charts, you can actually see that from here, I have the beginning of a resistance area. And that would be these guys right there, okay, right there. And the top of the resistance area would be that guy right there. And that's where this stopped. So I was also looking at that when I was trading Friday, making me feel that this long rally. But let's take a look at when the day began. I actually had several trades in this market on Friday, and this would be a nice review. So my time, in my time in Southern California, I don't start trading this market till about 6:30. If you're on the East Coast, that would be 9:30. Denver, that would be 7:30. So let me just expand this over here.
If there's a 6:30 news event, do you stay out of the market while that noise comes into the market?
You know, on the West Coast, they're usually 7 o'clock. Most of those reports come out 7 a.m.
6:30 here.
Oh, the Denver time. That would be what, my 5:30? Yeah, I'm not in front of my screen at that hour. All right. Because again, I also day trade the Russell, and you know we'll see. See, this is Chicago time over here. So 6:30 Chicago time. I'm sorry. 8:30 Chicago time is my 6:30, and that's Chicago time being displayed down here. So let's just look at, you know, old Yuri. You know, he drags his cup of coffee upstairs, and price. Let's hold on. Price has to penetrate this by a couple of ticks. The reason you see price going up and there's no flip over here is because price has to penetrate it by 3 ticks before it flips. So right when I was getting my coffee and I've just finished booting up, refreshed my ticks, we were right about over here. You can see the 828. We were, I think, right about over here. So my first thing to do when price was up here was to say, I want to find a reason to sell here. All right, and I didn't get it. Why? Because the Stochastic RSI is rising. But yours truly did the following. This is what I did. When this Stochastic RSI started to fall here, I just looked at, look at where the, look at where the, look at where we are. You didn't see this. Without your crystal ball, you didn't see that. All I saw, this big downtrend. So I did a 6-tick scalp, all right? And then I'm out, and now I'm drinking my coffee. I'm looking at the Russell painting on my left, and I'm looking at this guy. And then I saw this over here. And this was really, really nice, because this is, when you do the setups we were looking at, you get your swing line break. Matter of fact, let me expand this chart so you can see it clearer. When we got the swing line break on the volume bar chart right over here, you can look over here and see that your Stochastic RSI is clearly rising. You can see that your VB Stochastic is also rising, and you do an early entry. So that was trade number 2. In trade number 2, I got out right over there. When price penetrated right over here, this 2 ticks down, I got out. Okay? And I immediately placed a sell stop, a buy stop right there. And you know what? 5 minutes later, it didn't get hit, so I canceled the order. And now I'm waiting for another reason to go long. And let me tell you what that reason was. When I saw this little penetration right here, I once again said to myself, let me place a buy stop right here. Because if price gets there within 2 minutes, that's telling me some valuable information. That the market tried to resume the downtrend, and it couldn't do it. It couldn't even reach that. So I got swept up in the flow, and even though I realized this is 4 or 5 bars, these are volume bars. We got here in probably 4 minutes, all right, very quickly. So my stop loss was still down here, and I exited this trade right around in here, right around in here. I re-entered the trade once again on the break right up there. And let's see if we can see it. I don't know how clearly it'll look. But I got out close to the top and we used, let me see if I can do this here. Got to change these default values here. 1.62, save as default, and that's the color. And that was I think the swing line, I think the expansion that I drew was, because price didn't really do good retracement for me. I think I did the first one. No, I couldn't have. It was, no. So let's just stick with that one. And same thing again. And see there's one of them drawn right there. Let me change that to a 2 so it's easier to see. Sure. So unfortunately, it's not showing me I used this pivot and that pivot, and it gave me, one Fibonacci line right there. So I kind of get out right before there, So that was where I took the profit on trading above that high.
I see 2 Fibonacci lines. Is that why you
Yeah. No. That's the dynamic trio swing line there. Yeah. It flipped when price penetrated. When price penetrated right over here. I'm sorry about that. When price penetrated right there by 3 ticks, it's flipped. So that's that green line right there. But that was also moving forward. That was a big deal with me. Because when price did that, when price penetrated here, my Stochastic RSI is falling. But that was not a good trade right there. Let me show you how the easy way to do that is. when you're going against a strong trend, you can see that when this bar finished painting, you're really only in the first bar going down here of the own period. So what you normally do is you wait for a pullback, which is, within 2 ticks. That's right there. So there's your sell. And down, and you may want to take a profit here. A more patient trader wouldn't. A more patient trader would wait for the swing line flip, which would have served them very, very nicely, because this market really went down. But yours truly actually sold there, covered, sold again, covered, sold again. I can't tell you which is the best trading style. I'm willing to do that just because, actually, well, that's a good question. Why are you willing to do that, Yuri? And the reason is because when I look at the overall direction of this market, here's what I didn't like. When I look at these range bar charts, here's what I saw. Let's blow up the range bar chart. And this is something that, again, I can't really write up as a trading rule because I wouldn't know how. But it's easy to see a downswing here. It's easy to see a downswing here. It's easy to downswing here. But you know what? In my opinion, and again, when I risk my own money, I have to eventually trade my own belief system, right? From about this bar onwards, this is just a horrible sideways chop for 3 days, So because of that, because I know this market's choppy, it's swinging up and down, that's why entering following my trading rules, but I'm getting in kind of early and getting out kind of early, and then I'm re-entering when it breaks the prior pivot, just in case that trend resumes fairly quickly. I'm not saying that's the best way to trade, but if you ask me what is the best way to trade, I don't know. Works for me. So, wow. Any more questions on this? Well, okay, thank you, and we're going to have lunch now. Yeah.
Ollie Dennis will be trading in front, and then Yuri will be trading in back. Yuri said that at that point, he'll be looking at some other contracts, and he welcomes anyone to come back and ask him any specific questions. Yes? Well, we're going to have the big screen for the one that's kind of presenting to the group. While they're presenting, there'll be another group in the back where you can go and ask personal one-on-one questions. And then it will flip in the middle of the day. Those in the back will come up and we'll all have the big screen. It's kind of hard in a room like this to do 2 things with a big screen at the same time. So they can kind of point out setups and triggers and things to the full group, and then if you want, you can go back and talk to the others. So.
Are you going to have a larger screen for the back? That'd be a good idea.
Are we going to have a larger screen in back? No. No. Yeah. Unless someone can bring a big flat panel for tomorrow, which would be nice. But right now they'll be trading off their notebooks and back. Is that right? Yeah. Yeah. So, but anyway, our next speaker is Mark Braun. Mark has been an active trader for over a decade. He specializes in the use of Fibonacci time and price relationships together with momentum oscillators. He has been teaching others to find high probability trading opportunities using these techniques in seminars, chat rooms, and on one-on-one personal basis. With a background in software development and education, he assisted with the addition of several analytical tools in the Fibonacci software package. Mark has been an analyst and a moderator for Carolyn Broden's trading advisory service. He is currently developing a daily Fibonacci-based advisory newsletter for stocks and commodities, and is also a trainer with the Fibonacci Trader Training Service. Mark's presentation is titled, Applying Fibonacci Time and Price Ratios to Find High Probability Trades. Let's please welcome Mark Braun. I'll show you. Well, you just click this thing off here. Click that, you can put it in your pocket or clip it on your belt.
Okay. Well, I'll get my PowerPoint up there, but I want to talk about a little bit about why I got into this stuff, because I think that might be kind of valid. Yeah, I've been trading for a long time. I started actually in 1991, and I studied with Dr. Alexander Elder. I was using his triple screen trading technique, and I was doing pretty well with it. I took a break from it because after I started managing some money for people, I've just felt too much pressure doing that, and I wanted to get back out into the world. And I decided once things became so electronic, it would be interesting to, I mean, we had no like online order entry back then, and I thought it would be interesting to get it back into it and see what it would be like. So I started studying again, bless you, about 3 or 4 years ago. And I went through a few different things. I had a nice little counter trend system that worked pretty well, but it only gave me 1 or 2 trades per week. And I got tired of sitting there looking for those trades and waiting for them. I eventually ended up with, actually with Woody's room, Woody's chat room, Woody CCI, and I'm sure most of you are familiar with that, the Woody stuff, and I think that's great material and it works for a lot of people. It worked for me to some degree, but I was working on my trading plan because I was really into the CCI work as presented in Woody's. And I mean, I'm sure we've all had ups and downs with various indicators. I remember a particular day when I was new to CCI, and it was a wide range, it was a pretty nice range to the day, but it kept going up and down. And I was like, wow, trend line breaks on CCI. I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about with that, looking for a new peak or valley to break a previous trend on CCI. I was like, wow, I finally discovered exactly how to use this indicator. I'll make a fortune. And of course, the next day, the market looked different. And that didn't work, so there went that dream out the window. Again, I think that the CCI alone can work wonderfully for a lot of people, especially if you learn how to apply it to multiple time frames. But I was working on my trading plan, and my trading plan based on CCI at that point. And I noticed that I had 3 issues that needed to be addressed. And those issues were, first, initial stop. I mean, the entries were no problem for me because I had isolated which of those signals I wanted to take. But initial stop to me was too arbitrary. At that point, I was trading ES. And that whole idea of like, okay, well, your stop should be 1.5. Why? Why should it be 1.5? I didn't really see that as having any relevance to what was going on in the market at that moment. At the same time, another thing that was bugging me was targets. I didn't see any specific reason to take one off at after a certain movement in the market and so on and so forth. 10 ticks, take it off, 5 ticks, take it off, whatever. And the third, and I'm sure we've all seen this if we looked at CCI on shorter time frames, was how many triggers you get, how many signals when the market is choppy. You can just keep getting in and out of the market and just eat up your account if you're not really careful. And what happened then was Carolyn Baroden, CB, I'm sure a lot of people here are familiar with her work, came in and did a presentation in Woody's chat room. And I had used Fibonacci retracements years ago. When I say use, I mean I kind of looked at them and found that they were interesting, and I'm like, wow, look at that, yes, the market did stop there. But I didn't know how to use them. I didn't know how to use them actively in my trading. And you get the same question, I get the same question every day from people, well, how do you know which one's gonna hold? Which one's gonna hold and which one is gonna break? What Carolyn presented showed me that that can be done. And that there are all sorts of other ways to apply Fibonacci numbers to what was going on in the market. And I immediately knew that this meant something to me. And I joined her room, and took me a couple of months to figure out how to apply that to my trading. Definitely did. It's not something that happens overnight. It's a lot faster to apply it to your trading if you actually do the work yourself, because you understand more about it. You understand what's going on with it, instead of just looking at what someone else is presenting to you. And so I learned. I learned how to do it, learned how to run those price and time levels, and took it a couple steps in different directions, made it more proactive as far as trading. And here I am at this point. How many people here have looked at Fibonacci retracements? Wow, okay. So we all know basically what a retracement is and what that's good because the name of the product is Fibonacci Trader, so I'd imagine that there'd be some familiarity. What about extensions? Okay. And I saw that, Perry. And how about whether you want to call them expansions or projections? Okay, few less. All right. Now, why are we using Fibonacci? I'm sure everyone here has different answers on that. We've all heard about Fibonacci numbers in nature, how they're an ever-present part of nature. Fibonacci ratios also as a determining factor in math psychology. I tend to think those two things are linked. That Fibonacci numbers in nature also ties into how our brains work. The idea being that if the market goes up a certain amount and it pulls back 0.618, 61.8%, that's when people sort of collectively go, no, we want it to go up. It's the mass psychology getting together and doing that. Are they self-fulfilling? Maybe they are, to some extent. Maybe if you have a common swing that everyone's looking at and the market turns around then, it's because everyone's looking at that number and expects it to turn around so they all buy. So what? You still should take a look at it because so is fundamental information. All fundamental information, when everyone looks at a report and says, well, this means that we should buy this stock, that's why the price is going up. So these are all important reasons to look at this stuff. Personally, I lean mostly towards the mass psychology idea. Hopefully that makes some sense. All right, Carolyn calls this symmetry. Some people call it measured moves. This is the core of what I'm doing with the price work. When we can determine the rhythm of the market, in other words, what it is that makes up a trend, that the market shouldn't pull back any more than a certain amount to maintain the trend, then we can have some certainty that the trend is continuing as long as that price point isn't broken. So a visual indication of this market rhythm combined with key Fibonacci price levels can give us risk reward. We can have targets. We can have a firm idea that the trend is going to continue because the rhythm of the trend is maintained. The first tool that I use to find this symmetry or measured moves is the expansion tool. Now, I know Yuri showed you a lot about the expansion tool. There are many ways to use this tool. This is how I have mine set up. And basically, we're talking about the expansion lines tool. And I just have the value of 1 set there. That's almost always the only value I use in that tool. I also have one set to 1.618, but that's not on all the time. That I only use if the market is really extending very rapidly. And I'll show you now what we do with that tool, but in case anyone wanted to get an idea of the settings, and of course this is all in the workbooks too. I figured you'd want to see that. All right, this is how this works. We had a low. So I'm not going to use this right now. We had a low. We measure in the new uptrend the highs to lows of corrective declines within the context of the uptrend and project that from the new high. With that tool, you click and drag on the corrective move, and then you click at the new high. And what that's going to give you then are price points that you would want to see have hold. You'd want to see them hold in order to have the certainty or confidence that the trend is going to continue.
Mark?
Yes?
Could you back up and use your pointer so we know where you're clicking and dragging and dropping? That's a great idea.
Okay. If someone can tell me how to back this up. Previous. Yeah. Okay, right up here. Here was the low I was talking about. I'm not good with the pointers. High to low, then click up here. High to low, click up here. Okay? The corrective swings. That is with the, it's called the expansion. It's called expansion lines. Yeah, here. Expansion lines tool. That's where you can find it on the drawing chart, the drawing tools chart. And turn on the magnet also on the other toolbar, because that way the program will automatically snap directly to the high of the highest bar and the low of the lowest bar. You just drag from above the high to below the low. that you want to reference there. So actually, I can use this pointer. See? So you'd click, drag, let go, and then click. And then my next example here. Again, it was this corrective decline within the context of the uptrend projected from here that gave us the support we'd want to see for the uptrend to continue. Now, if this were a live market, this line means nothing to us anymore. We'd only be projecting from the highest high. But I wanted to show you how this works within a trend. So what I'm saying is basically you'd be looking for entries with whatever you use. I use CCI as per Denise. And whatever you'd like to use, some people use taking out a swing high of the bar, taking out the high of the bar that touches that line, for instance. You can use any number of triggers against that. But this is just the beginning, but it's a very, very crucial part of this type of analysis.
Which one are you clicking on to do the, after you draw your line?
Right.
Like on that upper one, then where do you click?
You click above the highest high, the last high. Yeah. So in other words, if I were doing this one right now, I would be taking each one of these highs to lows and clicking from here, from the new high only. Downtrend is the other way around. Take the low to the high and project from the new low. And you also count the swing once you know that you're in a downtrend, and you know because, for instance, here, we would have taken out, let's just assume back here there was a pivot low here. So once we took that out, we can say we're in a downtrend. You take the last swing into the high where the downtrend began and use that as well. Okay, now it gets interesting because we get to add retracements. The retracement tool, and again, you have this in the workbook. These are the settings that I use. These are the ratios that I find to be most important. And I have them color-coded similar to the way Carolyn has hers color-coded because I want them to stand out, especially since they cluster together because they're from various swings. I want to know at a glance where each one is, what is inside each one of those clusters. And of course, use whatever colors you'd like if you do want to color code them, but I do suggest that you do use colors because otherwise it's very difficult to judge the priority, the importance of where you're getting a cluster if all the colors are the same. In other words, it's going to be much more important to me to see that 618. The 618 is a very important retracement level. And the 1.272 and the 1.618 are the extensions. Those are generally for targets. So I want those to stand out as well. And don't worry if that doesn't make sense that I'm saying they're for targets because I'll have plenty of examples. Does anyone here use extensions for targets? Great. Okay, here's an example. Now again, if we were going to be setting up this chart now, all of the stuff would be projected from up here. But I wanted to show you something with the result in it as well. And what you're seeing here is symmetry and Fibonacci retracements overlapping. And basically what this meant was I took this high to this low and projected from this high. And then using the retracement tool with the settings that I showed on the prior page, take this low and go to this high, and then the next standout low and go to this high. And see where you get them clustering together. And we'll run some live examples too, so you'll see the process in action. But the idea is you want to see, you'll get a whole bunch of lines. And most of them are going to be standing alone. But where you get an overlap is where you have the most significant support or resistance. And this is the same chart later on. We had more swings to use. So we have symmetry support here because we took each one of these moves, high to low, high to low, high to low, projected from the new high, and we had more standout swing lows to do the retracements. Is this making sense? Okay. Any questions?
Yes, you have skipped some of the high low.
Yeah.
I know you are small. Is there any guide of where you can ignore?
Well, the best, it's going to be best, although a lot of this stuff is really going to be best to show when it's happening live. I'm trying to give the framework now for what's going to happen during the live trading, but I can give you some general guidelines. Let's say you have a couple of lows, like you have a low here. Can you see where I'm pointing? And a low here. They're very close to each other in both price and time. So I want the one that stands out more visually. So basically what you do with this is the lows that really stick out. This one, for instance, this one. But if you have two that are close to each other, the retracements are going to be so similar that it becomes market noise on the chart. And you really don't need more than call to you. A good average number to use, even in a long swing like this, good average is 4. 4 lows to use to connect to that high. See if you can find 4. If you can't find 4 without looking at some that are like right next to each other, then don't bother with 4. Go with 3, go with 2. And I think there was another question up front.
I think I just answered.
Oh, okay. Okay, now for the targets, we're using the extensions. 1.272 and 1.618 of the swing into the setup, projected in the direction of the trend. And that might sound confusing. I will show you exactly what I mean. The market may give you a lot more, but there's often at least a pause there. And depending on the time frame that you're trading, might be a long enough pause that you want to take profits and get back in later on when you have another setup. It's also possible, if your indicators are saying that the trade is still good in that direction, that you can at least not be worried about your trade when you see it skittering along at that extension. Because if your indicator is still saying that the momentum is upwards, then the likelihood is that that's eventually going to break. But like what we do, what Denise and I do is when we hit a target, we start to look for signs in the CCI that are telling us that the trade might not hold. The trade might reverse at that point. And you'll see plenty of examples of that during the live trading. We particularly use that when we're seeing really strong targets on longer term charts. And this is how it's done. Same tool, the retracement tool. Here I went from the swing high down to the low, assuming that you got in somewhere down here on this trade. You'd want to know what the targets would be. So we're basically taking this to here times 1.272, which was broken, and 1.618, which it hit, just about hit, and reversed. And if you notice here on CCI, what's this, a 3-minute chart? CCI, we had a hook also that would have told us to get out. Okay. The timing work, why don't we take a look at setting up a couple of price level charts live right now instead of jumping into the timing. That might make more sense. Okay. I can actually show you. Okay. Here's an example. This is bonds. This is EB. This is actually, we do a lot of trading with volume charts. So this is a 1,000 volume chart. And what I want to do here is basically see if I can find support and resistance. I always look from both directions. So I'm going to start with the expansion tool. And let's consider this an uptrend. I can take this swing down into the low. Okay? Go up to the high.
Can you convert it where put in the baseline so we can exactly see what?
Sure. Okay? So I went high to low, from new high. And I'm kind of eyeballing this. I can tell if I take this high to this low from here, it's already been violated. Now, that's kind of an interesting thing to try out yourselves, because what that's signifying is that the trend, the uptrend, is already showing weakness. Once it starts to break the rhythm of the trend, it's already showing weakness. However, the stronger symmetry is in the larger swings. So this one is larger, obviously, than this one, and that has not yet broken. So we have that support there. Now, once we began this pattern of lower lows and lower highs, we also have resistance we can put in. That low to high projected from this new low. So what is this telling us? This is telling us that we're either going to be range bound in here, or the side that breaks is possibly establishing a new trend or continuing the old trend.
Mark, why did you use that third swing to draw that one there?
This one?
Yeah.
Because it looks like it broke too. See? It's already broken. And again, that's telling us that a couple of levels broke, so the validity of looking at that as an uptrend is in question. So it's very important to me then to see, and one good thing about Fibonacci Trader too is that it allows us to control the length of our lines. So this is telling me that actually the support here, you see how the line is longer? The support is actually stronger than the resistance in this case. So the resistance is more likely to break. See how this line is shorter? Because it's lasted for less time. The support has been in place for longer than the resistance. So there's a possibility here that we'd be looking for the resistance to break and the trend to continue upward. What would tell us about that? Well, that's up to you based on your indicators. What you'd like to see in your indicators is going to give you an alert more to which side is going to break. However, for me, the uptrend has not resumed unless this resistance is broken. That's what will help to verify for me that we can see a further upward move. And let's add some Fibonacci to this. Okay, this is a retracement tool, a series here. And this is the same low, so it's kind of pointless. Let's use this low. All right. And anything that's standing alone, I don't really care right now about the extensions because I'm not looking for targets of this entire move. I'm looking for likelihood of which direction to pay attention to right now. Okay, anything that has broken, we can get rid of. Oops, that's what I meant about that galactic thing. Alrighty, so here we have our support, and now we can go high to low for our resistance. 236 and 382, particularly 236, are kind of on the weak side. I would really only leave those in as important if they were from a larger swing and a smaller swing had stronger levels overlapping. In other words, on a small move like that of this high to low, I'm not going to be too concerned about the 236 or 382. So I'm going to take those out. And let's move the chart down a little bit. Here we have our resistance, and we have almost, well, yeah, actually overlapping the 50%, we have our resistance symmetry, so there is quite a bit to get through here if we're going to continue the uptrend, but we also have a lot of support. So this is telling me that it's kind of range bound at the moment, the path is not clear, and I would look at my indicators. I mean, look at CCI. Denise, do you think anything about CCI in this chart? Anything calling to you? You can't see? Okay. Well, it looks like the 50 CCI is below 0. Over the 100 line, though, we would look for the possibility of this breaking down back below the 100 line. This is telling us basically, right now it looks more like it's to the downside. But for me, I wouldn't get in this trade until that support is broken. That's basically what we're looking at there. Sorry?
The bottom is the CCI, what's the red line on its own?
The 50. The 50 CCI. Yeah. The bottom is the Woody CCI combo. I have it set that way on some charts just because I like the 14 and 6 combination. You can, of course, also set them up individually. without using the Woody combination. I don't use the colored histogram stuff. It's just that it's all preset in the program to just say Woody CCI and you get the 14.6 set up. Everyone here is familiar with CCI or no? Does anyone not know what CCI is? Or okay, good. Because I don't want to go off on a tangent and.
Mark, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
About the lecture?
Sure.
It seemed like your initial retracement was maybe not a retracement.
My initial
I
retracement.
can see to the left of the left, but it's perhaps impulsing down.
To the well, I mean, I could do more. I could use another low here if I wanted. I was really just concerned more about what's going on in the immediate vicinity of the market. I'm not sure. Are you talking about the resistance, or?
I thought your initial thing was taking retracements of the current movement.
Taking retracements of the current movement. Yes. Well, this is down, right? I mean, this is a very short-term downtrend, right?
The one you used, the swing you used, way over on the left.
Here.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that was actually, that was not a retracement. That was a projection. So, in other words, I did not go, I'll do that one over again. I did not say, I'm just going to take this high to low and look for ratios, 0.618, 0.786. All I'm doing with that is in the context of an uptrend, this would be a corrective decline. So what I'm doing is I'm taking the high to the low and simply projecting from the new high 100%. The idea here being that if the uptrend is going to continue, you would not want to see that support broken because that support represents the rhythm of the uptrend. Does that answer your question? I'm not sure if that was, okay. And then what I'm looking for is for the retracements to overlap. Let's find something else. Okay, well, let's see what's going on right now in our Russell. Actually, I have to update a Russell here. Alrighty, this is a 24-hour chart on Russell, the 13-minute. And we use 13-minute a lot, Denise and I, in our trading. And so I have this one running on 24-hour because it doesn't give us any gaps in our indicators, any sudden jerks, you know, odd things at the open. I'm going to do the same thing. This looks like basically an uptrend is going on here. And scroll back a little bit and get it more in context. Yeah, that's an uptrend. I think that would qualify. And I'm going to do the same thing. Within the context of the uptrend, what would have to happen for us to feel the uptrend's over? The rhythm of the market would have to be broken. So I'm going to take the high to the low of a corrective move and project from the new high. And yeah, I'll turn those baselines back on. I forgot about that. Okay. And we even have a nice big one here. And so on. And I could theoretically go all the way back to the beginning of the uptrend and continue doing that. But the reality is I'm only really interested, because of the time frames we trade on, I want to see what's going to happen in the immediate vicinity of the market. If all that's broken, I'm going to be more concerned with setting up the resistance to verify that the downtrend is in place. Now, let's take a look at some Fibonacci retracement reinforcement on that. And this to me is particularly strong right here, because that's a 618 retracement that overlaps the corrective market, the measured move, the symmetry. And when you see that overlap, that's a particularly strong area, symmetry overlapping the 618, because 618, if you guys are familiar with the retracement levels, you know that's like the strongest one, that's make or break for the trend. So if it's going to bounce, if it got down that low, if it's going to bounce there. And the fact that that coincides with where it bounced before the market symmetry indicates that that's particularly strong. So the likelihood of a bounce is very strong there, and if it breaks, it's very significant as far as more to the downside. Alrighty. Now, for resistance on this time frame, the only thing I can do is look for extensions. Let's take a look at prior swing highs to lows. Okay. This one has just been broken. How about here? Okay. That's closer. Basically, I'm trying to see if it does continue upwards, where there's a likelihood of it stopping. Make sense? Good. So this is actually where our 13-minute Russell chart will be opening in the morning. And I think I got rid of a line I wanted to keep. Let's see. Yeah, those baselines confuse me a little bit sometimes. No, it's not showing up. Okay. Why don't we get into the timing a little bit, because I have a lot of examples that cover how to use those two factors together. Any questions, though, at this point? Yes. The values on the retracements? I don't change the clusters. Yeah, I don't change the values in the tools for any different time frame, and I look for the same kind of clustering no matter the time frame. In other words, the same rules apply, that I want to see that sort of clustering effect with those retracement values no matter what time frame it's on. I usually actually don't run those on 13-minute. I just happen to have that chart up. The 13-minute, we're more concerned with the CCI placement. I run the levels during the day on the 15-minute because also this ties into timing. The 15-minute I don't run 24-hour. I only run that during market session, because the theory of the kind of timing work I do is that you don't count what happens in the overnight session. And also, as Perry reminded us quite well last night or yesterday, 15 divides evenly into the trading session, and when you're doing timing, that's particularly important, because you don't want a bunch of 15-minute bars and then one bar to be 3 minutes. You know, it kind of throws off the whole concept. So you get 27 15-minute bars in a day, and I do the work on 15 minutes, price and time, and then usually on 3-minute for the more immediate stuff, as far as what we can look at as in support and resistance right then in that trade. And of course, Carlos, by the way, I didn't have a chance to put this into the PowerPoint and stuff, but Carlos has added, since Orlando, a feature to the retracements and the expansions that you can right-click on one that you've done and tell it to keep live. And what that means is, as the market makes a new high, all those levels are going to move up for you automatically. You don't have to go back and redo each one, because that was very, very tedious when you're trying to manage a trade and also see where your support is. Okay, we made a new high, got to erase everything and do it over again, do it over again. Now, once you've identified the swings, the program will keep the work going for you. You really only have to intervene when there's a new swing to analyze.
Hey, Mark, on
Yes.
that last example you did, you had the last corrective move made in that given trend.
Right.
Do you ever use the multi-symmetry tool to take all corrective?
Thank you for reminding me. I personally, I got so used to adding it, to doing each one manually each time, that I just have not. The multi-symmetry tool, if you're not familiar with it, yeah, if you're not familiar with what Ron is mentioning, there's a tool called multi-symmetry that does that 100%. It does the same thing expansion line does, but you can actually, I'll demonstrate it. What you do is you can choose several corrective moves and then project them all at once from the new high or low. And it is very nice, but the reason I didn't get into it myself is because, based upon the most recent move, I like to consciously make the decision about which prior swings I'm going to include in it. There might be some that are relatively small that I don't want anymore, but that comes with time, you know.
Martin, can the timing on volume bars?
No.
Just on,
Yeah, it's the same as what Yuri was saying also about trying to apply timing to range bars, for instance. You need the factor of a definite close in time to do that. As a matter of fact, the tool won't even project on that. If you try to use the timing tool on a volume chart, it'll tell you that yes, something will happen at 0 in time. So it kind of knows better than we do. Any other questions? Yeah, I'll do that right now. Okay, let's take a look at. Alrighty, well let's look at a. This is a 3-minute Russell, and the multi-symmetry is here. It's just right below the retracement tool. And what you do is you would go high to low, click and drag, release, and choose another one. Up to 10, I believe, right, Carlos? 10 in the multi-symmetry. Yes, okay. So you do as many as you want, or as many as you need, basically, and then right-click on top of the new high. And that way you're not going back and forth and clicking and clicking and clicking. And also, oh, I think I have to, how do I get out of it? Okay, and see, keep tool live. If I click the keep tool live, if this makes a new high, these are just going to bump up automatically, which really is, it's very interesting to watch too, because if you have some Fibonacci retracements in there and some symmetry lines, as the market moves, you actually get to see the retracements and the symmetry cluster together by themselves. So you really see strong areas of support and resistance build dynamically as the market moves. Okay, the timing. Who here uses Fibonacci timing? Okay, a few people. And I think maybe Yuri does. Let's put this back on myself. And that went back to the beginning. That was not my intention. Alrighty. I don't know how to use PowerPoint. I'm just going to leave it like this. You have all the same stuff in front of you. Same analysis, the same work. It's really the same tools turned sideways. We have two tools, two primary tools for timing. One of them uses 2 points, just the same way the retracement tool uses 2 points in price. And the other one is projecting from 3 points. Jumping ahead of myself a little bit. This is why we're looking for the timing, though. The same analysis that we use to look for symmetry and retracements and extensions on price can be applied to the time axis. And when we have an indication on the chart that those times are coming up, when the time and price factors meet, is when we're most likely going to find really strong support or resistance. Now, let's take a look at those tools. Tool 1, timelines. This is right below the multi-symmetry tool. As you can see, I have the settings for this set up very, very much the same, actually just about identically to how the extension tool is set up. The retracement tool, the price retracement tool. Same thing, just on the time axis. I got to admit, when I started to do timing, it took me a while to wrap my head around it, because it seemed very strange to me, the idea of using terminology even like time retracements, because it sounds like you're trying to go back in time. And it also, it's very, very strange to see timing work when you actually spend the time to learn to do this and you do it yourself, and you do find these timing confluences. When the market actually hits one of those points in time and then suddenly just plummets, and if it was in rallying, and you're like, wow, how did I do that? You know, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around, or it was for me. But now that I've done it day after day after day, it becomes easier. Time tool number 2 is time expansion, and this is also something you use this, right? This is your Yuri uses the time expansion tool. I use it in a slightly different way. And this one I have set to a value of 1. See, that's the only one I have checked there. And 1.272 and 1.618. Okay, here's an example of what you can do when price and time come together. Okay, here we had, still better off with this, here we have a price extension. This was, as you can see, I labeled this swing. This high to this low times 1.618. And I took, with a timing tool, again, just basically connect the same dots. Connect the high to the low, and it projects forward, but on the time axis. This is called a time price square. When the same swing gives you an extension in time and an extension in price, when the market comes together right in that bar, it's very, very strong, the likelihood of reversal. And also, if it overbalances, meaning it goes through it, which does not happen as often as it reverses, but if it does go through it, it's going to skyrocket. So it's an important place to watch in any case. Generally, though, you're going to get a reversal when you really have a time price square. And the time price square is only when you can do the same swing. In other words, the last swing down, measured upward using the extensions, with the time overlapping on the same bar. I'm just showing you a couple of examples now, and then obviously we're going to run some. Okay, here we were looking for a low, in this case, against support. And again, I just connected prior swings. Connect a high to a low, a high to a low. I think I'm missing a slide that talked about what to do with each tool, actually. Might have fallen out of sequence. Yeah, okay. Use the timelines to connect the outstanding highs and lows of prior swings. Connect highs to highs. Basically the same outstanding highs and lows that you would use for the retracements. Anything that calls to you, that sticks out. The 2-point tool, the first one, the timelines. Connect highs to highs, lows to lows, lows to highs, and highs to lows. Basically, every time there was a swing, you want to click on the first pivot and drag to the second one. What you're looking for is a confluence. You're looking for a projection ahead in time where you have a bunch of these different lines line up. The time expansion tool is what gives you directionality. In other words, if you're in a rally, you want to see when the rally might terminate, look for prior rallies, and you take the prior rally and project from the low of the current rally. And it's basically counting bars ahead then. Because, I mean, think about it. If the market rallied for 10 bars and then fell, and then rallied for 10 bars and then fell, you kind of want to know when it's getting to the 10th bar again in the third swing, because it's a pattern. So what we're looking for is that timing symmetry to also line up with Fibonacci timing ratios. Look for an overlap of at least 3 time projections within a bar or two of each other. Focus on the major Fibonacci ratios and the 100% projection, which is what I'm saying, the bar counting. 236, 382, 0.5, 2618, only for confirmation. You would not value a 0.5 on its own. Best timing zones will also have corresponding price levels, just as I showed you in those couple of examples. Really, timing standing on its own is interesting, but what you really want to find is a time and price level coming together at the same time. In other words, one of those price clusters, or a key extension from a large swing. Watch your shorter-term charts for signs of reversal. Now, this is something that Denise and I have been working on a lot, which is I do the price and time on the 15-minute Russell throughout the day. And we're looking at what's going on, for instance, the 13-minute CCI is telling us long, 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 everything's great for the long. And then we're getting entries on our shorter-term work, 233 tick if you're using e-signal. Denise uses my track, so it's 133 tick. Looks great, in a great trade. And then we're coming up against time and price resistance, and what we found is that CCI, the 50-period CCI in the shorter term, is going to show a massive divergence, almost invariably. And by watching that closely and watching then for position, which Denise will show you, the position of the close of that bar where the divergence is completing, we've been able to take very large trades and get out to the tick occasionally. I mean, sometimes it's close, but sometimes, a couple of times there we got out to the tick on very large swings by following price and time and then looking to the short-term CCI to tell us, yeah, you better take this top seriously. And that's also helped us because it tells us that there are a lot of times when we see divergence and we don't have to pay attention to it because it's a clear path. So we can look instead for another entry, not wonder and worry, is that divergence the one that's calling it quits? No, because timing is in 45 minutes. So we have a clear path. We don't have to worry about the reversal right now. Yeah, here's an example of that kind of confluence that I was talking about. I just ran this one the other day. I was looking for, the reason I'm sounding iffy about it is because in reality, you wouldn't be chasing down timing in a situation like this because the market's not showing any directionality. It's in the middle of the most recent swings. So the question becomes, am I looking for a higher